Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Talk with Paul from Screenwriting Scribe. And guess what? The movie industry is not dead. I know that's pretty remarkable, right? Because I think the last couple of weeks, I think everybody in the world has been saying that theaters are dead, that no one is going to the theater anymore. So, but this week we find out that people actually do go to the theaters, believe it or not, which I think is I think a lot of time in our current culture, there's a lot of what do I want to say? It's a lot of clickbait. I'm not immune to it. I've done it myself for stuff, but I think we all get to see that everything doesn't seem to always be as worse as what we think it's going to be. And so the numbers this week reflect that. We'll talk a little bit about that. So again, welcome to Real Talk, which is sort of the world of Hollywood from a screenwriter's perspective. And so we'll talk about we'll talk about topics that we normally hear about on other shows, but we also look at it from a screenwriting perspective. Well, today, let us take a look at those numbers. So let me get those up here. Let's see here. There we go. All right, let me see if I can find those on my screen here so we can talk about some of these fun numbers. All right, here we go. Okay. So this week, Inside Out made $57 million. It was down 43%, which isn't too bad for its third week in. So as we said, it has a lot of staying power, which shouldn't surprise us. We talked about it a little bit last week in that the reason why it has such good staying power is because it connects with audiences on a bunch of different levels. And so Inside Out 2 is actually the first movie to hit $1 billion for the year, believe it or not. And I think that's pretty cool. And I thought Dune would do it. But again, you're hitting a lot of people, and people are really sort of, they like this type of writing. It connects with people on a whole bunch of different levels. And so I think that's really the neat thing about all of that. Next comes in number 2, A Quiet Place, day 1, with $53 million, which is actually the best in the entries of all of The Quiet Place, which was pretty interesting. It did better than, it's actually been doing, I think, a little better each time there's been a new movie that's come out, though it doesn't follow the same family that we've had in the first 2 movies of The Quiet Place. And we'll talk about that really good, but really good entry, $53 million. And then we have Horizon, America's Saga, Chapter 1, the big Kevin Costner movie, came in at $11 million. And we'll talk about why that is not such a good benchmark to come in at, and what it could mean for the series going forward, because it is a 4-part movie series. And I think it was $68 million is what the cost of the episode was, or this particular movie. So it's not looking to track very well, but we'll talk about that here in a couple of moments, why that might not be looking so good. Bad Boys 2, Ride or Die, still doing good, $10 million. 4 weeks, it's made $165 million, so pretty good. Kalki, which is a Indian movie for all my Indian fans out there, came in with $5.4 million. And we'll actually look at it on the international market here in just a couple months as well, because it did fairly good. It's one of the highest priced Indian movies that has ever been made, but I think it's on track to easily make its budget back. And so many people were very excited for that to come out. The Bike Riders, the sort of the motorcycle gang movie, $3.3 million. Total gross of about $16 million. Doesn't look good. Garfield is doing okay. And I wonder if it's not going to, I think it's going to probably fall out of the top 10 though this next week, as soon as Despicable Me 4 comes in. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, still holding strong, 1.7 million at number 8, with 168 million. Good. Jan and Julia 3, 1.5 million. I haven't looked too much into that one. I'll take a look at that. Kind of Kindness, 1.5 million with an overall gross of 2.2. I've heard some stories about that. They didn't really do a good job of marketing and bringing it out to extra theaters in times. And so it's actually making a lot less than what they had hoped that would make. What we don't see on this list is The Exorcist. Let's take a look and see how that did. The Exorcist is all the way down at number 18. It made only $183,000. Thelma's still looking pretty strong. We talked about that as sort of a surprise hit, as a sort of surprise indie hit. That made $3 million this year with a total of $5.1 million. So I'm really excited that Thelma has still been doing really well in theaters. So those are sort of the numbers that we can take away from this. And so let's take a look at some of each of these stories a little bit more in detail. And we'll do that here in just a second here. So, but we'll take a look at these stories here a little bit more in detail. Let me pull up one of the next ones here. Let's see here. This is always the hard part. I got a lot of good articles for you this week. So here we go. All right, we'll share the screen. All right, here. So let's talk about the Kevin Costner movie first. So I looked at a Variety article. Ho hum box office of Kevin Costner's Horizon carries a message: don't turn movies into television series. And so basically what they're getting at here in this particular article was that it basically should have just been a movie on Max, HBO Max, or streaming services or something along those lines. Now, it was cool that Kevin Costner has enough money. He put $38 million of his own money into this. So he has a lot of passion around it and stuff like that. He actually said it could be closer to 50 million. But the interesting thing about this is the box office returns are now in on Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1 and taken in a big picture way as an indicator of where the saga is heading. The numbers are not very pretty. I suspect they would probably be as soon as I saw the film at Cannes, where I was one of the many critics who gave it a mixed to withering review. What made this special case is the 3-hour film is just 1/4 of the whole project. 3 hours. That's a long investment for people to get nowadays. Now, I think it's a little different if you have a web series and stuff like that, where people can sort of break up that hour long and you could have it into 4 to 5 different episodes or something along those lines. So Chapter 2 is set to come out in August. Chapter 3 has not been shot, is being shot right now. And Chapter 4 is at this juncture a frontier castle in the air, meaning an idea for a movie hanging out on Kevin Costner's balance sheet. So I had heard some stuff later in the week or earlier in the week talking about how they just might do the film in August, but then keep the rest of the stuff and put it out on Max for right now. But I don't know what Costner's obligations or his contract with them. So the beginning movie is $100 million price tag, and they've only made $11 million back. I like sort of what they say has the potential to not only a financial train wreck, but the direct kind of train wreck that unfolds in slow motion over the course of many months. In case of Chapter 3, it involves building the train even as it is in the middle of crashing. That's a lot of box office pain to buy for $38 million. Now, I think the thing, with any movie, though, we got to try, right? We have to try to create a movie, and it's not always going to hit with audience as well. And so as we look at it in terms of screenwriting and stuff like that, why didn't this hit so well? I think it has to do, again, with you're making basically a television series and turning it into a movie. People are expecting things to happen during the movie, and there was a lot of setup during this particular movie. Costner, I've heard a lot of good things about this, in that Costner had talked about that he really wanted to set the story up. And so he did a great job of setting the story up. There's a lot of different plot lines going along, and then it just sort of ends. And then there's a 5-minute sort of here's the next episode and stuff like that. And people are used to that with a TV show, but they're not used to that with a movie. Most times people want a sort of a beginning, middle, and end for a movie, even if there's an extra sequel or something along those lines, or if they want a cliffhanger, and it didn't really end on a cliffhanger. And I think that's the reason. So the thing that we can take away as screenwriters is there wasn't a cliffhanger. There wasn't writing for a movie you wrote for a web series or a TV series. And I think that's where this movie falls short. And I think this is, and the numbers reflect that. People are like, why would I go through a 3-hour movie and not get anything out of it? Or I have to wait to watch the whole 12 hours until I get the whole complete story. Do I want to invest my time in that? Now, if it's a web series or something on Amazon Prime or HBO Max or Netflix, sure, because then you have everything broken down. And you can make it episodic and make it really well done. But unfortunately, Costner didn't do that with this particular movie. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, let's see here. One of the big movies out of India right now. This is why I sort of changed my numbers or my banner on here, talking about just film numbers, because I think it's interesting that we look at, there's more than just American cinema. There's also international cinema. And I think we have Kalki 2898. It's one of the most expensive Indian movies ever made, with a budget estimated at about 72 million. Has a 43 million worldwide 3-day release already, so including 5.4 million in North America. I wish I could have somewhere close to go watch this, because I think it's interesting to watch different films. I mean, you know, I'm also a big fan of South Korean, the film scene in South Korea, even Chinese as well too. So I enjoy really good stories, and I think it comes back to that: is it a cool story? Is it good characters, believable characters, and stuff like that? So the film was released on Thursday, June 27th, across 42 territories, and a total worldwide gross is currently at 66 million. And so I think it's doing really good. It debuted in 5th place here, and they didn't have a ton of advertising, so you can see that's got pretty good strong legs. And I think it's easily going to make its budget back of $72 million. So, and the other interesting thing about it as well too, you can see that it's released in several dubbed language versions, including Hindi, Tamil. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing all those different languages, but you can see. And I know, so they said they have a lot of different languages for people to include in this. The thing that I think this article was talking about, the thing that ran up against was had to contend with cricket. So June 27th was the semifinal of the Men's T World Cup, where India defeated England. And then Saturday, June 29th, was the final, where India defeated South Africa. But it still managed to overcome these challenges and was the highest grossing film in India. So so now that is over with, I'm wondering if it's actually going to make more money. So it's going to be interesting to see next week what the numbers look like for Kalki 2898. If you've seen that, let me know in the comment section below. Like I said, I'd be interested to watch that as well too. I always like good movies, and I think it's important that as screenwriters, especially, you see movies and you get exposed to different characters from different parts of the world and stuff like that. So I think it's important to look at that as well. Let me make sure that I covered all those different topics that I wanted to cover for. All right, so let's get to the upcoming movies. So let me change my banner. So those are the movies from this past week. And again, the box office was really good from last week. People are expecting the box office to be as good, or if not even better, because of the July 4th weekend. July 4th is on a Thursday, and there's going to be 7 days for movies for people to watch. And a lot of people have actually taken time off earlier because of the 4th of July landing on a Thursday. So basically, though, in terms of what's coming up, I'll show you what's coming up to my local theater. Let me share that with you. Boom. All right, so we're taking a look at what's coming up down the line. Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, led by Donna and Reverend Martin. 22 families from a rural black church in the small East Texas coast of Possum Trot adopt 77 of the most difficult to place kids in the foster system and kickstart a movement in the process. That one is going to be new, as well as Despicable Me 4. Now, we talked about both of these sort of last week because I got sort of confused as to when these were coming out. So the interesting thing is, do we think Despicable Me 4 is going to do as well as Inside Out 2? And so that's a great question. Hi, Zaya. Nice to see you today. Thanks for coming on today. Good to have you aboard. For this week, like I said, we're looking at Despicable Me 4. Do you guys think that it's going to do as well as Inside Out 2? So the hard part is, the interesting thing too is I found with, I was watching a couple other shows about Despicable Me 4, and a lot of the advertising has gone with the Minions. When the Minions have sort of popped up on the advertisement, you have noticed that the movie has done better. I also don't think it's going to do that well compared to Inside Out 2, because if we look at sort of the history of Despicable Me, it does well, but not as well as, especially domestic box office wise, than something like Pixar does. Now, you might be wondering, but Despicable Me 4 actually does fairly well on an international stage. Now, you might be wondering about that. Why does Despicable Me 4 do better on the international stage than it actually does in terms of domestic box office? Well, the reason for that is because there's a French company that produces this. I think it's a French company. And so there's a lot of, and sort of the tropes and stuff like that are a lot of it is European. And so you have a lot of, the bigger box office is actually in Europe than it is in the United States. So it'll be interesting to see if Despicable Me 4 will be able to, how big of a beginning launch it will have, especially with the 4th of July weekend. And so we'll have to wait and see what that sort of looks like. And so I'm interested to see how it does, because as I've told earlier, is people are like, hey, guess what? Everything's going great. Now that Inside Out 2 is sort of seemed to kickstart the market. Some people would actually say Bad Boys, the Bad Boys movie actually got things rolling. I think people are really more careful with their money right now, and they want to have what do I want to say? They want to have more control over their money. They want to make sure they're making good decisions. Since there's not a lot of money, they want to make sure they go to a good show. And so a lot of people aren't going to go to a bad movie. Hence The Exorcist, like I said, only $183,000 because people know it's a bad movie. They're not going to waste their money like we have in the past. There's more, and the other thing too is there's more entertainment options. Why go to a bad movie when I can pull something on Netflix, or go for something free like Pluto or Tubi? You can watch a bunch of good movies off of that as well too. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll come back. My prediction for Despicable Me 2, I think it will probably be the #1 movie, though it'll be not as big. I'm going to probably say, let's see, I think probably only 50 million. I'm going to go with 50 million opening box office. So I think here in the States, only 50 million over the July 4th weekend. I know it's a little low, but I just don't see. I think with Inside Out 2, I think that's sort of more of a juggernaut. I think we're going to see that's going to do. That's going to keep rolling and doing well. All right. Well, let's hit to some news that came out. Now there's a lot of fun news that I've been looking at over the week here. Let's see. So let's start with this first article. From Script Magazine, talking to the writer and director Michael Sarnarski about A Quiet Place Day One. And I'll admit I was really wrong with Day One. I didn't think it was going to do as well as it did. It actually did fairly well. And I think it goes back again to that writing. So Michael Sarnarski was handpicked by franchise creator John Krasinski to write and direct A Quiet Place Day One, the third installment and prequel to the widely successful series. The ground rules of this bone-chilling universe were squarely in place. In a narrative nutshell, blind aliens savagely hunt their earthly human prey by tracking their sound. You make noise, you're toast. So I thought, so they had some interesting questions for him. And one of the first ones was, as we can't talk about the character without discussing Samira, also known as Sam, who was played by Lupita Nyong'o, who started out already vulnerable with terminal cancer well before the alien invasion. How did that idea come to you? And I think this is one of the interesting things when you think of it from a screenwriting perspective. How did they come up with the characters and the situations that the characters were in? And he says, I vividly remember meeting with John Krasinski, who told me, hey, I want you to make the installment a New York Day One invasion movie. What would be your entry into this be? And I thought of all the tropes of New York invasion and disaster movies that I didn't want to explore, but I couldn't come up with a character that I did care to explore. Then one Sunday night, a Samaritan, or I'll just say Sam, just appeared to me. I thought, what if we were following someone who had a different relationship to death and survival than other people? Because I knew that maybe in a weird way, the apocalypse could be the opportunity to help her live in a way that she hadn't before. Then a lot of other stuff organically came out of that. So an interesting sort of side note with this as well, too. I recently did a video talking about themes, and we talked about death in the Lord of the Rings. If you haven't taken a look at that particular video yet, I talk about themes versus the Acolyte and Lord of the Rings. I got a lot of views on that particular thing, and I don't necessarily think it was just for the Acolyte, but I think it had to do with the theme of death. And I think a lot of people, it's a very interesting thing to talk about, believe it or not. So I think he's onto something here. This leads me to a question about Sam sticking a medical pain patch to her back before she left the hospice facility, which provided a payoff when Eric later scrambled to find a replacement patch in the pharmacy. Did you initially plan for that payoff? Well, the way I write, I tend to first find the character in the world they inhabit in order to get a general sense of what is putting them through. Then my first draft is always a vomit pass where I just crank it out. And I know it's going to be rough and that it won't make much sense in some ways, but allows me to reread it and say, here are things that I want to explore, maybe even without realizing it. So I don't usually decide on detail like the medicine patch and the fans, because that's something I would usually discover through the character and fleshing out her life as a cancer patient. How would her condition become an obstacle in this new world? So I think this is another interesting thing as we look at this particular writer as well too. Again, I think a lot of times when we first think about our screenwriting, we don't always we don't write what I want to say we don't write like we should. We write and we want it to be perfect, and so we're constantly going back and re-editing. And I think it goes to the fact that we can't just re-edit anymore. We just need to get it out on the page, and I think that's what stops a lot of us newer writers. I know it stops me from time to time too. Is like, well, I want to make this perfect, and I think talking to this particular screenwriter, Michael, he does a good job of reminding us just get it out, because you can always edit it. Because screenwriting is really about rewriting. You need to get the screenwriting out. You just need to get it out there, out of your mind, so that way you can eventually work on it, have other people look at it. I think the biggest thing for me is once you get the draft done, is you wait like a couple weeks and then go back to it and start say, hey, this works, hey, this doesn't work. We talked about this last week with Script Studio. You can also, again, I don't get paid for this or anything like that. But there's different softwares out there that you can use to help you sort of do plot points. You can do this even in Final Draft, or you can just pull out a Word document and say, hey, this scene is helping me get to point A to point B. And do I see a dramatic tension increase throughout the different scripts and stuff like that? During my script, do I have this feature of the theme of death here? Do I have it here? How am I doing that? And so I think he does a great job of saying, just get it out. So if you get anything out of this particular episode of Real Talk, is just get that first draft done. Just get the first draft done. Just get it out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't make it perfect, because you just need to get it out there. So yeah. So like I said, that's one thing I just hope you take out of this thing today. And I think the other thing interesting, so we'll go back to this particular interview, and it was also interesting to connect her character with Eric, a British tourist in Manhattan, who in a way was already displaced even before disaster struck. Was this intentional? The big thing for me was trying to do justice to New York City, which means different things to different people. I like the idea of exploring how Sam was a native New Yorker who's now grappling with how to reconnect to this place, and then pairing that with an immigrant story in New York with a character who came to New York for a different reason. It's the idea that the city and its destruction can mean different things to different people. And the idea of Eric feeling out of place was important, because I also wanted the audience to feel that Sam does when she first encounters him. She has an idea of what her narrative is going to be. And then suddenly some random guy invades her movie and she's like, what are you doing? This is my movie. Go away. And she has to grapple with other people who come out of nowhere. Sort of like common life too. I mean, you think you're doing well and then suddenly bam, you run into somebody else. So if you want to read more about this, this is at Script Mag. I'll put this in the description of the live stream. But give it a read. It's really interesting, and like I said, I think it's good to take a look at other screenwriters and see what works for them and why they do the things they do. So I think that's an important thing to look at. Let's see. Then I wanted to share a article. Again, this one shows you my age. That there are going to be dueling Jaws documentaries distributed ahead of the blockbuster's 50th anniversary. Yes, Jaws is going to be 50 years old. 1975. I'm actually also 50. I'm actually older than Jaws by a little bit. But I thought it was just interesting to sort of, again, so the reason why Jaws is such a big deal during the this particular month. Hey, SS groupies, nice to have you come by. Good to see you. Good to see you today. Thanks for dropping by today. Thank you guys for all the comments in the comment section below. I really appreciate you guys showing up today for the live stream. So talking about Jaws a little bit more, Jaws is sort of what made the summer the big thing. Summer used to actually not be the time of year that most movies, that wasn't when Hollywood was really banking on movies, was not the summer holiday. People were like, oh yeah, it's summer, woohoo. But Jaws really changed that. And so that's why this particular documentary is important, is because Jaws really went about shaping the summer blockbusters into what they are today. So like I said, the reason why things are like, cool. Thank you, SS Group DZs. Thank you for, I'm glad you're learning a lot from the videos. And like I said, if there's anyone you want in particular, just let me know. I'm always happy to make them. Just leave them in the comment section below. That's where I get a lot of my video ideas. So again, thank you for stopping by. But again, talking about sort of Jaws is, again, so this is where Jaws is, it's sort of its cultural impact. It's sort of its pop culture impact, in that Jaws really got the summer blockbuster season started. If it hadn't been for Jaws, we wouldn't be in the, Avengers Endgame wouldn't have come out in the summer. It would have come out at a different time of year. And so this is why Jaws is important. I've read the book. Don't read the book. The book is really bad. But this is actually where the book is worse than the screenplay. The screenplay is actually really good. And so yeah, so if you want to know a little bit about Jaws and just how that came about, this movie, which is like a happy accident, a series of happy accidents, Hollywood basically tries to make it into a formula. There's no encapsulating the magic again. Very often, I think Hollywood tends to forget that Jaws also has some very, very well-drawn characters, and the first half of the movie is setting up those characters, the dynamics between them, which ultimately pays off well in the second half. And I think that's the big thing about, I know a lot of people tried to copy Jaws, but it was the people, there's the characters. It was really well written in that particular sense. And that's why I wanted to pull that up to you, where actually the screenplay is better than the book. Give the book a try. I read it for one summer. It was bad. It was really bad. Let's see here. All right here. Well, that's sort of the news that we have for this week. And then let's run over to pulp culture. So there's an interesting article that came this week on, let's see if I have it up. Nope. Give me a moment here. We'll get the article up here for you. Aha. Nope, wrong one. There we go. So there's so as I was telling you before, we had this one of my last videos was about theme, and we talked about the Jedi, or I should say the Acolyte, and Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. We talked about how that in the Acolyte we seem not to have a lot of we don't have a lot of theme. The theme is really non-existent within there's really no theme within Star Wars. SS Group C's, nope, I haven't written any books yet. Not yet. I can, if you want, I can recommend some books for you. Big Red Stripe has a good book that he just came out with. I should do a review on it. It really, I think it's really, he used to work at Pepperdine and teaches about stuff. And so I would highly recommend his book. Another one that I have here, and let me get out of this for just a second. This is Kill the Dog by Paul Guyette. Another good book to read. It's down here. So those are some good ones if you want some good resources about that. So let's see here. Let me go back to talking about everybody's favorite thing, the Acolyte. So yeah, so we talked about that in my video this week about theme versus no theme. And interesting enough, I just found this article about this guy from Forbes who said the anti-woke Star Wars fans are being weird about the Acolyte. And I don't necessarily agree with a lot of this stuff, but let's take a look and see what the writer has to say. Now, a powerful Sith, a compelling mystery, and a thrilling lightsaber battle. I'll give you the lightsaber battle. We don't really know. We know he says he's a Sith, but we don't know if he really is a Sith. A compelling mystery. Definitely, this guy's got to watch better mysteries if he thinks this is a compelling mystery. This is not a compelling mystery at all. The Acolyte is providing one of the strongest stories of Disney Star Wars era, but anti-woke fans are extremely weird about the show. Strongest stories. I don't know what he's... I don't know. I think there's a lot better stuff with Mandalorian than what that has to say, but either that or just shows you how weak the other programs are. I don't know. It just sounds, I don't know if he's watching the same show I am. It just sounds really weird. So, perfect SAC groupies. Yeah, let me know if there's anything else you want. Maybe I'll do a video this week on just some of the books that I really enjoy, because I think, yeah, I always like to help people figure out what are some good books to read and stuff like that. So what happens in episode 5 of The Acolyte? So episode 5 of The Acolyte boasts a tense battle with the masked Sith using his helmet to deflect lightsaber hits and even short-circuit the deadly weapons. And he's got a X-post. Headbutting a lightsaber blade made one of the coolest things you've ever seen. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It was different. And, I'm not totally up on all the Star Wars lore, but I thought it was really weird at first. But is it tense? It was probably the best lightsaber battle of Disney Star Wars, but I don't know if it's any of the ones that are better than the original trilogy or even the prequels. Now, despite being outnumbered, the Sith ruthlessly mowed down his opponents. The battle resulted in a surprising high number of fatalities. No, I thought that was great that Disney did that. They did kill off a lot of Jedi, which shouldn't surprise us, though, because the people that they brought along, we didn't really know very well. There was only a couple characters that we knew or had any sort of attachment to, but the rest of them were like, okay. Now, I'm probably going to mispronounce his name. I apologize if I do that. I think it's Khmer, played by Manny Jacinto. And meanwhile, long lost twins Osha and May, Amandel Steinberg, man, my pronunciation is going back today. Sorry. Clash over their value systems. May attempts to reconcile with her dogmatic sister, but Osha stubbornly clings to the narrative that the Jedi told her and rejects May. In frustration, May knocks Osha out and switches places with her sister in order to get closer to Sol and presumably get her revenge. At this one point, it's obvious that May has been framed. She lost her temper as a child and burned Osha's book, but the fiery lantern in May's hand was shattered off screen, a clear indication that someone else started the fire that killed the witches. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I'm not as invested in this particular storyline. I mean, it just, I don't know. To be honest, I don't care. I think when he says it's a compelling storyline, honestly, I don't care about what's happening with May and Osha. It was a fire. Okay. There wasn't really compelling evidence to say, okay, yeah, we see that we think May did it, but who cares? I mean, that's the problem. Who really cares? I mean, I don't really care about these characters. And I think that's what the writer's forgetting. May blames the Jedi and Osha blames May, but there's a possibility that Kumar was involved, as Sith tend to provoke infighting among the Jedi while hiding in the shadows. Okay. The episode has everything that a good Star Wars fan should. Let's see, the episode has everything that a good Star Wars story should. A family feud, a powerful, manipulative antagonist, and a tense lightsaber duel that introduces a creative new fighting technique. All right, so let's take a look at that for a second. So I would dispute the first one, a family feud. Star Wars isn't, I don't think it has to do with the family feud. I mean, we don't really. So if you watch the original Star Wars, we don't know Vader is Luke's father at all. And that was a very compelling movie. Probably one of that's what got us really going into it. I mean, The Empire Strikes Back, Lucas throws us a curveball with saying that Darth Vader was Luke's father. But like I said, I would argue that, or even, well, I was going to say Rogue One. It still has sort of a family dynamic to it as well too, and the prequels don't really have a lot of family dynamics. Now, I always think I like the other part, a powerful, manipulative antagonist. I think that's what Darth Vader made his money on. I mean, that's who Darth Vader was. That's what Darth Vader was really good at doing, was being an antagonist. And I think Darth Maul, again, good antagonist. He was somebody that people were scared of. There was some manipulation going on there. I mean, even Boba Fett in the original movies was good because you didn't know a lot about them. He was powerful, manipulative. Same with the Emperor. I mean, you didn't get to know a lot about them. In later movies and later shows, they fleshed them out a little bit more, and I would say that's to their detriment. Now, a tense lightsaber duel that introduces a new creative fighting technique. I'll give you that. I don't know if it was tense. I think the bad part about this thing too is they a lot of the lightsaber duels were hidden behind trees and stuff, and I get that. And it was dark, and to me that means they were trying to cover up actors' not ability to fight very well. So, I mean, there's good and bad things about this. Now, many Star Wars fans were loving the series so far, but a segment of the fan base have been overly critical, nitpicking minor details and review bombing the show. So again, I don't know. So you can't be critical? I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, people are critical of my work. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, if you put something out there, you're going to have to contend with people not liking your stuff. You're going to have people calling you out for stuff they don't like, and that's okay. And so when does the criticism become too much? But I would argue that the story isn't that good. And so I think that's what people are upset about, is the story is not as good as what it should be. Are they review bombing stuff? Maybe. But I also think that's the only way. How does the consumer let the studios know when something works or not? They let them know by telling them they don't like it. They do that by going to sites and saying, I didn't like this particular experience. And so again, you're putting content out there, and if people don't like it, they're going to tell you so. You should take the lesson from that and say, okay, what didn't they like? How do we make it better? As opposed to just sort of whining about why people don't like it. Again, I had to do that with my own content. This writer has to do with his own content. People don't like his particular writing. To be honest, it sort of sounds like he's being a troll right now. Star Wars fans have been angry about Star Wars since the prequel trilogy, but the current split in the fandom is even more petty than usual. And I noticed that so Chris Gore from Film Threat is going to be having an event called The Funeral for a Franchise in Memory of Star Wars on July 17th, which I'm going to take a look at. I think it's going to be pretty interesting and stuff like that. But I think you can tell a difference in And again, when I talked about my theme for Star Wars, why there's a big difference between then and now, because when George Lucas originally wrote the trilogy, he wrote it in terms of what is, good and evil. It's a story about good versus evil. And when Disney took over, they sort of got away from that. There is no two sides. There's just different sides. There's no good and no evil anymore. There's just different perspectives, and people don't like that anymore. And so, I think that's what you're seeing. Is you're seeing the reason why people are so upset with this particular trilogy isn't because it's because they are used to one thing and then suddenly they're getting something else. It's sort of like a bait and switch. This is Star Wars. This is what my expectations are for Star Wars. And then suddenly they've moved away from it. Is that good or bad? It depends. I mean, does a franchise need to grow? Yes. Is there a way to make it grow without sacrificing your fan base? Yes. I don't think Disney has seen that yet. They're trying to make their own set of Star Wars, but they're forgetting what made Star Wars a good series. Now, the War of the Wikipedia. Now, the editors of the official Star Wars Wiki, Wikipedia, recently received intense backlash from angry fans after editing the birthday of a Jedi from the prequel trilogy. An alien known as, I'm going to butcher it, Kai-Adi Mundi. The guy basically looks like a cone head. I'm old enough, SNL skit. But if you don't know, Kai-Adi Mundi is, you're now known as a Jedi in the background character with a handful of lines. The character appears in the Acolyte a century before his introduction in the Phantom Menace, and his date of birth was changed to reflect the cameo. I think the biggest backlash about this was this particular character. They're in the Jedi meeting, and he says, let's see if they have it here. The cone-headed character managed to spark controversy again after his quote about the Jedi being extinct was brought up in the wake of the Acolyte unveiling. I'm gonna have to probably go in and edit how to say his name as the masked Sith, with critics viewing the moment as breaking canon. This is probably the first time that Star Wars lore has been altered with a new story. I've been in Star Wars fandom for so long. I remember back in 2008, pre-Disney, when Ahsoka's existence broke Legends canon. I remember when everyone was in an uproar over the Mandalorian portrayal in TCW, contrasted Clone Wars, Mando's, Republican Commando books. So with any story that has a lot of different pieces, there is, there's going to be contradictions and stuff like that, especially when you have a lot of other people working on it. And there's been a lot of different authors throughout the time. So I'm not really that surprised that something was wrong. But I think this is the reason why they're mad is, however, the point of Kai-Adi Mundi declaring the Sith extinct is that he is wrong. Indeed, one of the biggest plot points of the prequel trilogy is that the Jedi have become too complacent to recognize a Sith in their midst. I don't understand how you can be a pretty high information Star Wars junkie and then turn around and treat Kai-Adi Mundi's line about the Sith being extinct as factual when the audience knows he is wrong and he's saying it. Sidious didn't spring out of a hole in the ground. So again, yep. Do I think it breaks the show? I didn't like that particular piece when he did that. Is that my complaint about the Acolyte? No. My complaint about the Acolyte is it's boring. It's a boring show. The characters aren't that interesting. The plot isn't very interesting. Did they have? Like I said, episode 5 was the best because they had some lightsaber fights. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was pretty cool. But at the same time, the overall storyline is just really boring. It doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. I think if they led with 5, I think that would have been a lot more interesting. I think I would have gotten a lot more into it. But it's taken us 5 episodes to get to something that's actually fairly interesting. Some of the criticisms from anti-woke influencers were openly hostile and clearly made in bad faith. For example, May cutting her hair with a lightsaber was criticized as a woke plot twist for some reason. I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think I've seen very many people calling that a woke plot twist. I'd have to look with at least the people I was watching. The trope of a samurai or knight cutting their long hair with a sword is common and represents in the beginning. One of the most famous examples is seen in Disney's adaptation of Mulan. Yep. The show was also criticized for Padawans being too skilled at lightsaber duels, another common Star Wars trope. The fact that the Jedi could not sense the Sith before he revealed himself. This occurs repeatedly in the prequels, and the fact that the Sith helmet could deflect lightsaber blades. The helmet is made of cortosis, a special metal. Now, the last one I've been out of Star Wars enough that I really didn't understand that. So, let's see, SS Group. Can you please help me with some movies based on lighting and dark scripts? Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're asking for in terms of help? What would you like? Can you give me a little bit more information about what you want for that? And I can see what I can do for you. Oops. Let's see. Where did I go? There it is. All right. So, I think I'm trying to think of in terms of this, I think the interesting thing, the comment was Monday practicing with sticks, Tuesday dueling against a Sith. I think they could have made that particular scene better. I think, do you have Padawan sort of punching up, that sort of term that you get from MMA and stuff like that? Are they punching out of their weight class? Are they doing better? I think so. I mean, they could be. A lot of it is emotion, and I think it would have been more interesting if they would have showed that he was the Sith Lord was sort of allowing her to be consumed sort of by the dark side and stuff like that. I think that would be a little bit more interesting. I think the problem with that is I don't really remember that particular case where the Padawans did so much better in terms of like the original movie, because Luke it was a progression. I think you see that more in the Disney Star Wars type of universe where, and I could be wrong. Please happy to point me out. Hey, I'm always happy to tell you when I'm wrong. But let me know where you think there is in the older movies, like the prequels or the original trilogy, where the Padawans were doing better than what they should be. So I think that's a relatively new thing. A barrage of bad faith critiques imply that some Star Wars fans would probably hate the original trilogy if it was released today, and all these films had retcons, mistakes, and awkward lines of dialogue. I think the problem with a lot of this is that I think the thing that I'm gonna probably sort of disagree with this particular thing is, yeah, most stories have mistakes or awkward lines of dialogues and stuff like that. But I think that when you look at the overall story is told well. You could forgive a lot of these things. And I think if the Acolyte was told well, I don't think you would be having this type of problem. I don't think people would be dissing the movie as much as they are, because the story is so bad. The characters are really awful. And the dialogue is even worse. And so people can forgive stuff when you have a good story, solid characters. Yeah. Will there be mistakes? Yep. But I think when the overall story is just bad, it's just bad. There's been much to criticize about Disney handling of Star Wars, the excessive use of nostalgia, meandering storylines, and too many spin-offs. But The Acolyte is an attempt to tell a new story within the Star Wars universe using familiar tropes. The show is not for everyone, but it's far from a disaster. Getting upset over the birthday of a background character indicates that some fans are trying and failing to find fault with the series. It might also be the case that the anti-woke influencers have become accustomed to making bitter complaints for the sake of their subscribers and keep watching the series in order to attract engagement. I did like this other tweet. Let's see if it pulls up here. In conclusion, this week's episode, Star Wars: The Acolyte has forever ruined Star Wars. So make sure to hit the subscribe and like button and join me next week when we talk about the next episode of Star Wars: The Acolyte. So yeah, I get that, but at the same time too, it's sort of like, well, how can you? So what's the limits then to being able to criticize something? So I think that's the other thing to think about. So SS Groupies, dark ambient screenplays like Batman movie. Have you looked at what is it? Seven. Seven would be one. I can think of off the top of my head. In terms of dark lighting, Darkman with Liam Neeson. That's an old movie. But definitely take a look at, well, maybe like Aliens. Alien, the first one, that would be a dark movie. But now I forget what the first one I gave you. The first one I gave you, Seven. Take a look at that. That's definitely a very stylistic movie, and I would go with something like that as well. So take a look at that one. See what you think. All right. So, but again, the Acolyte. I think that's the thing, though. Disney, in some sense, incentivizes people to talk about it because they want to. Because they want good press. Any press is good press, right? And I think that's been something we've heard about before. So, all right. So that's. So, what do you think about that article from Forbes? Are people who criticize Disney Star Wars anti-woke, or is it legit? If they don't have a good storyline, then can't we criticize that? If they have boring characters, can't we criticize that? If they have scenes where you can't see the action, and this is not just Disney Star Wars. I think a lot of shows do this where you can't really see the action. A lot of stuff gets filmed at night. A lot of Marvel movies have been interesting. Another Disney product. Marvel movies have been said for that too. They set the scenes in the evening, so you can't see stuff as well. And that says a lot because of people not wanting to do fight choreography and stuff like that well. Okay. Let's see. Our next topic is AI filmmaking. So let's get to my article on AI filmmaking. So let's see here. AI filmmaking. So there's an interesting article that came out about. Let me see if I can find it real quick again. There was an article that they had on Film Threat about. I have to find it real quick again here. Sorry there. Give me a second here. About AI and just sort of what the industry is using for in terms of how many industries are using AIs. There's an interesting survey about that. And so we're going to take a look at that real quick here. You wash your body. All right. Let's see here. So this, article comes from Variety as well, too. All right. So let's do this. Okay. Alrighty then. Okay, here we go. One of these days I'll get better with doing all the stuff here. Okay. So this week, in terms of AI, so we want to talk about, this is an article that was shared by Film Thread, what media and entertainment execs are saying about using generative AI. So this is a survey from 2024. So in terms of looking at general AI adoption among U.S. media and entertainment companies have currently prohibited from using it, or 6%. We've not started yet to explore it, is 15%. Exploration phase, 19%. Currently testing and piloting, 9%. Tested and paused, 2%. Active in a few areas, 33%. And active in several areas, 16%. So you can see that the vast majority of companies are doing something with AI, whether they're just exploring it or they're actually using it in a few areas or even several areas. And so where are they looking to use AI right now? And the vast majority of them are looking for content design for new content. And so this is, I think, is a good thing, because I think a lot of times it's hard to show what stuff will look like. And I think if you can use an AI generator to help give you images for what you're writing about, I think that works really well. in that it gives you a design concept. It's not replacing your writing. Again, we're not talking, when I talk about AI use, we're not talking about replacing the writer, because we'll get to a different article. AI writing sucks. It does. It's bad now. Will it get better? Absolutely. But I think at the end of the day, the most important person to tell a story is the human being and not the computer. So another thing to look at here is that it has enhanced visual effects in content. Is 49%. Marketing and distribution, 49%. I think, and then you have customer service chatbots. You probably already run into them into whatever websites that you've been running into. You also have content localization, so AI dubbing. So this was interesting. When I watched this particular video off of Film Threat, they talked about there was several people who are known throughout the world for being the voice of George Clooney in their particular language. And so that is something that I had never thought about before, that those people would get their jobs replaced by an AI dubbing robot. And I think that's not a good thing, that to lose those particular actors for that. Developing consumer applications, none of the above, don't know, or other. So intense. So what they're generally using AI right now is just for a general concept. But again, that's replacing artists who do concept art. The nice thing about AI is it does stuff fast, and you can take a look and see how things work well. So factors affecting AI implementations, quality of AI generated content. I just watched a video yesterday that was showing all the bad stuff that even Midjourney and all the other types of picture sort of AI art, how some of the images are, how some of the video editors or the video producing stuff, so like you type in a prompt and it creates an image that moves, how some of that is just so wonky right now. And so I think that's where a lot of them are like, right now it looks really bad. It does. It looks really awful. The efficacy, accuracy of generation or generative AI tools. That's another thing too. AI lies to you. that's the part of it that we don't always realize, is that AI does lie to you. It doesn't always tell you the truth, and it doesn't, not in a malicious way. But that's it wants to please you. It wants to, instead of giving you good data, it just gives you some data. And so that's the reason why a lot of studios are like, let's not use AI, because it's not tried and true yet. Data privacy or personal propriety information again. Now it seems like every single software they have is using that to sort of glean and train their own AI bots and stuff like that. And so, yeah, people don't want that. Cybersecurity. Sort of related to efficacy of AI tools is the copyright intellectual property laws. There's a lot of lawsuits, litigation that's going to happen to see if AI can keep gleaning stuff for free and not have to reimburse the authors of the stuff that they make. Ethical data related to AI training sources, again. Customer acceptance. A lot of people don't like AI, and I understand that. They don't want crap, and right now, a lot of AI stuff is crap. I mean, you can really tell, and we'll get to an example here in a couple minutes of AI writing stuff versus somebody else. AI can't write comedy right now. And it's probably going to be a long time before it can. Regulatory compliance, 25% energy use, environmental impact, which I thought is a little weird, 23%. I didn't think AI has that big of a footprint compared to stuff like cryptocurrency and stuff like that, but who knows? So the adoption barriers for media and entertainment companies come down to the following different things: lack of skilled AI personnel, consumer backlash or confusion about AI generated content, copyrightability of AI generated material, and low confidence in quality of AI generated outputs, uncertainty about source of AI training data. So there's a lot of different barriers. And you can see that there's a lot of different things that people are really not wanting to deal with in terms of a media company until this stuff gets ironed out. And I think it's going to take a while for stuff to get ironed out in terms of this. And so I think we have to still So I think so as much as people are worried that AI is taking over Hollywood, at least according to that particular survey, there's a lot of apprehension about AI at all. I mean, the WGA, I know, had some implementations in their contracts with the studios to say, hey, you can't use this. And so I think we're seeing that right now as well, too, in the in sort of the marketplace. So let's see here. The other article I wanted to share with you was, not that one. This other one where a writer talked about challenging ChatGPT with one of his favorite writers, screenwriters, Kaufman. And so we can take a look at sort of, this is what the AI wrote. So the prompt was, this is a comedy. It's supposed to be comedy. So our writer here, Kaufman is the screenwriter that he is talking about, or he's sort of putting up the ChatGPT against. So it's an embarrassing fact that ChatGPT that requires a tag team partner. After setting up an account, I do a lot of the work. I spend time inputting story details, getting it to create an outline based on adaptation. I input Kaufman characters' backgrounds. I basically encourage it to do its best plagiarism. Am I committing a crime here? Chat response reveals it has become enlightened on what humankind has known all along about screenwriting. Writing an entire script requires a lot of work. You think? It apparently can't write a full script. I could have told you that. Instead, offering a scene that contains the underwhelming mediocrity I expected. But that is also frighteningly competent if seen from the perspective of a mediocre writer. So the guy's case when he writes this particular article, he says that people who are mediocre writers are the ones who are going to be affected by ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is basically a really good mediocre writer. So here's the scene. Ethan, hey Alex, how's the screenplay coming along? Alex, oh, the usual, just fending off studio contracts with one hand and fending off screaming fans with the other. Ethan, defeated. I just wish you'd use your talent for something more meaningful. Alex, maybe someday. When I'm sitting on a pile of money, I'll consider it. Ethan, determined. Well, I'll keep writing stories that matter, whether they make it me rich or not. Its limitations become even more apparent when it applies comedy as subtlety, as if using a comedy macro. It assumes all hyperbole is funny, throwing it at the scene as if it's seasoning with rock salt. Ethan, sarcastic. The life of a Hollywood titan must be so tough. Alex, it's a burden, Alan. I carry the weight of cinematic greatness on my shoulders. Ethan closes his journal, his expression one of mock frustration. You're a real martyr, Alex. Alex leans back, taking a sip of his latte with an exaggerated theatrical flourish. Theatrically. Indeed, my dear brother, now what is this you were saying about arts and meaning? If this is a comedy, it's all of the Saturday night afternoon for tweensers variety. ChatGPT is, in fact, a hack. Reading through more of the scene, I'm revealed how it confirmed that it doesn't seem capable of understanding why Kaufman's 4 simple words are funnier than the pie-in-the-sky humor it hurls. Chat doesn't know how to use context or subtext to draw out funny nuance. There are several simplistic exchanges arguing about art in similarly bland fashion, repetition suggesting it doesn't get that the pith in screenwriting is screenwriting's optimal state. It's not that it can't deliver the concise staccato rhythm writers tend to love, but it's that the actual content amounts largely to variations of the same meaning. So it sounds long-winded despite the delivery. Though Kaufman cleans ChatGPT's clock, I give it some credit. It writes instantly, whereas Kaufman needs time to plant seeds with which to grow nuance. It's worrisome that AI can already do what it can. As others have pointed to, ChatGPT is already a threat to one special group in particular, human hacks. If a threat to the twin devoid of self-awareness, it's a danger to human mediocrity, and that's honest to God alarming. There are countless writers who depend on mediocrity to make a living, countless viewers that actually love their mediocrity. So I think that was, so that's pretty interesting, that his particular take of that. And I'll include that article tomorrow or in the links in the thing below. So what do you guys think about that? So is ChatGPT just basically going to help take over mediocre writing, or is it actually an existential threat that a lot of people think it is? Again, I think it's more of a tool. And I know I've gotten a lot of blowback, a lot of pushback on that. But in some sense, how do we look at ChatGPT in terms of stuff like Final Draft? Because at one point in time, people were sending movie scripts into folks, into the producers by mail. And so they would get several hundred a year. With the advent of screenwriting software, they were able to send in thousands per year. And so with AI, it's going to probably be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of scripts. So the producers are going to have a hard time figuring out what is good stuff and what is not. And as we can see from this last article, a lot of it's going to be mediocre garbage. And so it's going to be even more important as writers. And that's why I don't see writers ever going away, because ChatGPT is always just going to focus on being, mediocre. There's no incentive for it to get better. It's a mediocre writer, and if people like mediocre writing, they're going to like mediocre writing. And so I think that's where you're going to still continue to see a human screenwriter. Just my perspective. I could be wrong. I never said I know everything. So if you have a different opinion, that's good. Let's have a discussion. That's the one thing I always like to do, is I like to discuss stuff. And so many people are afraid of having a discussion. My mind can get changed. That's okay. When we learn new things, new facts, and have new experiences that change how we think, we can change our minds. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. And I think that's okay. We can have our minds changed. I think one way right now, that could be totally different 2 years from now. That's okay. I learn, I grow. And I think that's something that I wish more people would do. All right. Next chapter, screenwriting software updates. I talked to Oliver, a friend of the channel from Storyworks. They have some really cool stuff that's coming down the line. I can't wait until, they're really working on coming up with one of the best free screenwriting software editors out there. So if you want to go over to Storyworks and give it a try, you can. They have some cool stuff coming down the line. I can't say anything yet. It's just really cool stuff, and it's I've been really working with them to help create a free program that I don't get paid for this. I'm just saying right now, I don't get paid for it. But working with them to create a great software experience for you. Yeah, I think you're going to really enjoy it. And some of the stuff that they're adding right now is stuff that isn't in any other screenwriting program, but I think it can be. I know you hate hearing this, it's a game changer, but I think it's something that's new and innovative in the space. And it's something that I think a lot of other people will probably start going to after they see this particular thing. So when I know more about that, I'll let you know. Also talking to Studio Vidity again. I haven't talked to them for a little while. If you haven't checked them out, if you like Android apps, I would definitely take a look and give them a look. They're more like Studio Binder in terms of screenwriting. They're more of a production app than they are just screenwriting. Though I'm going to take a look. It's been a year since I've seen them, but it looks like they've been doing some great, incredible things. I'm going to talk to the president or the guy who runs it or the creator, and hopefully have a good talk with him to see how things are going. I'm really excited to see how they're doing in the space. So that's what I know for screenwriting software. And finally, for channel updates. So this week, another real talk episode. I hope you enjoyed this for today. I thought it was a lot of fun. I've been enjoying doing that. I'm enjoying interacting with folks. I'll try to get better at doing that. But yeah, if you want to know anything about StreamYard, if you want to use it, I think there's a link somewhere in this where you can find out more about it, how to at least give it a try. It works pretty well for me. I'm still getting, like I said, still getting used to it. But I think it's been fun looking at different articles and stuff like that. Gonna put out some more. I'll probably do something more about the Acolyte because people have been wanting to hear about it. But again, I'm taking it from a writer's perspective versus just, hey, this sucks. Well, I like to say, if I don't like something, I like to say, well, what can we do to make it better? I think that's, in terms of criticism, it's always easy to criticize something, but it's a lot harder to say, well, how do you fix it? And so hopefully, like I said, you can see some better examples. I try to point to say, okay, this isn't a good example. The Acolyte is not a good example of theme. Well, let's take a look at what a good theme looks like. How does that work? How do I apply it to my writing? I even, in that particular video, talk about, here's a screenwriting software you can use that's going to help you do that. And I think that's important as well, too. So take a look at that. But I think in terms of I also think of, let me know if you want me to do something in terms of just starting a script, writing a script, and showing you how to use each different software. I'm thinking of doing that. I've been getting more, like I said, more into audio dramas. So I think I might actually put an audio drama out or two. I'll do it on a different channel, but you might see it in the community section. I might release that. So if you want to look at that, I think, and Final Draft Made Easy is still going well. Is there anything in particular you want in a program or a class on how to use Final Draft and how to use it well? Let me know in the comments section below. Well, we made it through another episode. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. Again, I'll put a breakdown of all the different spots, all the different topics as we go along. Till the next video, live well, write well. We'll see you later, guys. Thanks for joining in.